A teenage girl with a high interest in science and a former genius inventor embarks on a journey to save the world from a long predicted crisis. The movie begins, and we are introduced to the protagonist named Frank Walker, who is recording himself and telling a story about the future. He hates that the future can be scary, but he is interrupted by a female voice from the background who pleads with him to tell the audience about how he saw the future when he was a child. He then recounts visiting the 1964 World's Fair in New York City as a young boy. Young Frank arrives at New York World Fair carrying a big bag with him on his back. He finds his way into the Hall of Inventions and presents a jetpack he made to David Nix, who rejects his creation. Since it doesn't work, David tells him that it has no purpose at all. However, Athena, a young girl, appears to be interested in Frank's creation. Outside the hall, Frank recounts how his dad also expressed his disappointment towards his work and told him not to waste his time. He was about to give up until Athena approaches him. She gives him a pin and instructs Frank to follow her team after 20 seconds. Before leaving, she introduces herself as the future. After the time elapsed, Frank follows Athena and her team to a park, where he bypasses the line and enters a boat. During the ride, a laser scans his pin, causing his boat to pass through an underground passage, leading him to a train station, and then he boards the transport. Following an unsettled ride, Frank finds himself in a cloudy environment. He sees Athena waving at him in a flying pod. He chases after her, but to his dismay, several robots appear and begin to assemble themselves, pushing Frank to the lower level, which causes his jetpack to crash. Suddenly, a big robot forces his jetpack out of his hands and begins to fix it. Frank receives his jetpack and also a thumbs up from the robot. The two technicians chase after him, causing him to fall again, but upon igniting his jetpack, he begins to explore the city. Eventually, he spots Athena and lands roughly in front of Nick, who frowns at him and walks away. Athena gives him a reaffirming smile as she grabs his hand and walks him through the city. We are taken back to the recording, and the female voice interrupts him again. She agrees to take over from Frank. We are then introduced to the deuteragonist named Casey Newton, who, unlike Frank, is an optimist. She begins her story from her childhood days, as she recalls naming the stars in the sky with a big smile on her face. She proceeds to tell us about her teenage life. One night, Casey sneaks into a NASA demolition site. She uses a drone to hack the CCTV camera and then sabotages 3 construction cranes. Unknown to her, she is being monitored by a little girl. Casey returns home to meet her younger brother still awake. Later that night, the girl from the site picks a strand of hair from Casey's helmet and uses her DNA to code a similar pin that was given to Frank earlier on. The following morning, Casey's dad, Edie Newton, learns that all 3 cranes at the NASA site were destroyed. Casey pretends to not know anything about it. He tells Casey that NASA is taking down the platform, and it is inevitable. Even though he is not happy about the whole thing, he has finally accepted his fate to be jobless. Casey reminds him of the 2 wolves, light and hope, darkness and despair. Her dad agrees with her that the wolf who will win is the one that will be defeated. Casey goes to school, and her teachers talk about nuclear war, environmental entropy, and dystopia, but Casey only wants to know one thing: how can we fix it? No one seems to have an answer to her question, not even the teacher. That night, Casey goes back to the NASA demolition site to destroy the replaced crane, but this time around, she is caught by the police. Casey collects her items after being offered bail, but she is surprised to find a small pin with the letter T on it. When she picks it up, she finds herself in an endless field of wheat. She freaks out, dropping the pin to the floor. Casey takes the courage and picks the pin up once again. She begins to walk through the field until she hits her head. To avoid hand contact, she uses her chewing gum wrap to pick it up from the floor. Eddie picks her up from the station. On their way home, she shows her dad the pin and convinces him to touch it. But when Eddie touches it, nothing happens. Not everyone will make heaven. Enraged, Eddie takes the pin from her hand and puts it in his pocket. At night, Casey sneaks into his room and retrieves the pin. She finds herself in the field once again and begins to walk through it until she falls from the staircase. To feed her curiosity, she sneaks out of the house and rides to an open field. Touching the pin this time, she finds herself in a world full of wonders, filled with excitement. She starts exploring the city and goes to a Tesla station where she meets a woman who invites her to board the train with them. When they arrive, she follows a group of space travelers. A girl invites her to join them on their space expedition. As she walks towards them, the pin suddenly runs out of power and she finds herself in a lake. Casey went back home and pleads with her brother to help her find another pin on the internet. Fortunately, they find a shop without an email or a phone number. She asked Nate to tell their dad she went camping with their friends, while she boards the bus to Houston to find the store owners. The following day, Athena arrived at the house and asked Nate about Casey. He realizes that she is from the future and reluctantly tells her where Casey went to. Meanwhile, Casey manages to locate the shop. She meets the owners, Ursula and Hugo, who force her to tell them where she found the pin. They ask her for for a girl's whereabouts, but she is confused and doesn't know what they are asking her of. She attempts to leave the shop, but they attack her with a laser gun. Athena throws a device at them, which tracks them in a time bomb for a few seconds. Later on, she engages them in a fight, pulling off Ursula's head from her body, which results in a massive blast. Casey and Athena manage to escape. Athena breaks into a car, and they both flee the scene. In the course of their journey, Casey learns that the shop owners were audio animatronics. Athena reveals to her that she was the one who slipped the pen in her items. During their conversation, Athena begins to malfunction, and Casey panics when she finds out she is also a robot. In an attempt to stop the car, she hit the brake and runs out of the car. Athena chases after her, but she was hit by a moving truck. Casey sees the opportunity and drove off with the truck, but Athena quickly recovers and chases after her. She manages to catch up with her. Casey screams upon seeing her, but Athena calms her down, telling her that she is from the future and she has come to carry her along. This seems to be a little bit of relief to Casey as she agrees to follow her, but insists to drive them to the place herself. Back in Houston, police are searching through the store's wreckage when a black van pulls up and several people get out, led by a smiling man named Dave Clark. One of the policemen finds the head of a robot. In order to conceal who they are, Dave pulls out a device and disintegrates the officers. He informs the rest of the team to contact Governor Nix. War is coming. Casey and Athena drive to Pittsfield, New York. Casey, who is eager to go to the future, keeps asking questions, which causes Athena to shut down. Casey leaves a message for her dad on the cell phone stating that she will be back. Later on, Casey hands over the driving duties to Athena, only to awaken on the side of the road with Athena driving away. Seeing a mailbox with the name Walker on it, she finds her way to a nearby house, where she encounters a scary dog, but upon seeing it has no paw print, she realizes it's a hologram. Casey proceeds to knock on the door, but a man from the house tells her to leave. She shows the pin to the camera and demands to be taken to the future. Suddenly, a concussive blast knocks her backward, and Frank opens the door. She pleads with him to take her to the place she saw, but Frank tells her it doesn't exist anymore and walks out on her. At night, Casey tries to find her way in. She sets Frank's truck on fire, causing him to get off the house in haste to put out the fire. Casey then sneaks into the house and locks him outside. She begins exploring the house and finds a recording device that shows the child version of Frank trying to make Athena laugh. She enters a room filled with several televisions and a countdown clock. Frank manages to find his way in and confronts her to leave. When Casey demands to know why he left Tomorrowland, he reveals to her that he was thrown out, and all doors to take him back were closed. During their argument, all the TVs flick, causing the percentage on the screen to drop. Frank, who is in shock, turns to Casey and asks, "Who are you, kid?" Suddenly, his monitors beep, indicating the presence of some uninvited guests. Dave tells him to hand over Casey or he will be extinguished. Instead of giving her up, he chooses to save a soul, sealing all doorways to the house. Dave and his team break into the house and attacks Frank and Casey, who led them into so many traps before getting into a bathtub, which rockets them out of the house and lands in a nearby pond. In the pond, Casey struggles to find her hat and refuses to let go until she finally sees it. They walk into the forest to board a bike, but bump into Athena, who picks them up in a truck. Casey is happy when she learns that they are heading into the futuristic city, but Frank gets into a heated argument with Athena. It seems they have so many scores to settle. Athena eventually arrives at a television station, hoping that Frank will take them to the spectacle. Frank initially refuses, but later on agrees to take them there. He leads them to an underground tunnel where they board a teleporting machine. He covers Casey's eyes and pleads with her not to pee on them. As they were about to begin their journey, Frank turns to Athena and asks, "Why her?" But Athena replies, "Because she hasn't given up." The three are instantly teleported to their new location. Casey falls to the floor and cries in pain, but Frank quenches her thirst with Coke in the fridge. Casey is amazed that they arrived in Paris within seconds. After knocking out a guard, the three enter a small room containing statues of Thomas Edison, Gustave Eiffel, Jules Verne, and Nikola Tesla. Frank reveals that the Eiffel Tower they are in is an antenna, which was built by Tesla to observe every kind of frequency outside the world. He activates the spectacle, opening a secret passage to Tomorrowland. A while after, the tower splits into two, and a rocket emerges from a compartment underneath the ground. Some French robots chase after them, but they manage to board the rocket, which blasts off, escaping their attackers. Their main compartment of the rocket flips around and hurtles back toward Earth, breaking through into another dimension and crashing to the ground. Casey finally steps into her dream world, Tomorrowland. Only it is deserted and horrible compared to what she was seeing. A group of people approaches them from afar, and Frank hands over a small device to Athena, which she hides in a compartment inside herself. Governor Nix emerges from a hovering train looking mean. After a brief interaction with Frank and Athena, Casey is introduced to Nix. Frank tells him Casey is capable of fixing the machine that can predict the future. Following their conversation, a platform transports the group up, showing flashes of things that would happen moments in the future. The platform rises into a sphere, and a globe rises on a pedestal. Frank demonstrates explains to Casey how it can transport people through time. Casey is surprised to find herself in her house where she sees the events that took place a few days ago. She learns from Nyx that with the aid of tachyons, they can go backwards and forwards in time. Casey pushes forward into the future, but is disappointed to see cities being destroyed, the whole place being covered with fires and smoke, and worst of it all, she sees her family's home flooded in water. Nyx informs her that what she just encountered will all happen very soon. She pleads with him to let people from Earth come to his world, but he refuses, stating that the plague will end up killing everybody. As Casey walks away, there seems to be flashes of hope. Frank and Athena were surprised, but Nyx doesn't want to accept the possibility of a better tomorrow. He knocks Frank off with a hand fork. Frank wakes up in a confined room with Athena and Casey nearby. Athena informs him that he will be deported very soon, but he doesn't seem surprised hearing that. Casey discovers that the monitor gives people the wrong idea about the future, and she reveals that the only solution is destroy it. Frank realizes that she is making a point. He tries to explain the whole thing to Nyx, who tells him that shutting it down is impossible. Nyx revealed to them that the whole stuff was his idea. He wants humanity to perish by accepting whatever the machine reveals. As they were about to transport them back to Earth, Frank grabs Nyx's hand and activates the sphere lift via the control on his watch. The two engage in a fight, and Frank tells Athena to use the device he gave her to blow up the sphere. Nyx activates two robots to stop Athena from doing so. She throws the device to Casey, who climbs to get up the sphere, but her journey is cut short when Nyx stops the platform from ascending. Athena gets control of one of the robots and knocks the other one off. While on the platform, Casey uses flashes of the future to predict her next move, but her joy is cut short when the platform descends with speed. Athena stops her from crashing by using the robot arm to hold the platform. Frank pushes Nyx through the portal, and both men land hard on the floor. Athena closes the portal in an attempt to stop the robot from entering inside. With the device armed and no way up, Athena hurls the device through the portal and calls on Frank to get out of the way. The device explodes, shutting the portal and causing a piece of structure to crash on Nyx's leg. Suddenly, Athena sees Nyx pointing a laser gun at Frank. To block the attack, she rushes into the line of fire and takes the blast. Frank carries her in a rush to take her to the repair module, but she stops him from doing so. Before she shuts down, she shows a recording of young Frank, who was attracted to her but was scared of what will happen when she finds out she was a robot. Another tells her how she has been having emotions towards him but has decided not to report this. Finally, a recording of the year 1984 emerges when Frank was banished from Tomorrowland and blames Athena for what happened. In her words, she says, "I was designed to find dreamers. I found you and I lost you." She urges Frank to use her self-destruct device to destroy the sphere. Frank uses a jetpack and ascends above the sphere with Athena in his hands. After a final goodbye, he drops her into the sphere. She then explodes and destroys the entire place. After the explosion, Casey and Frank wonder what to do next, and they both decide to make it work once again. Casey opens the portal near her home and invites her dad and brother into Tomorrowland. Frank builds several child-looking recruiters. Each is given a pin case with the mission to find dreamers, those that will help feed the right wolf. In the end, several dreamers are seen in an endless field of wheat, and eyes are drawn toward the pyramidal structure of Tomorrowland. Please click on the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel to enable us to grow and strive better. Thank you.